Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of Season 3 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. This is the 76th episode of the show and the 53rd regular episode. Today, James Varlack will be joining me to share some of his strategies for making instruction engaging. He shares some great best practices as well as some great applications of educational technology tools like Google Slides, Pear Deck, Whiteboard.chat, Whiteboard.fi, and Google Arts and Culture. Let's get to it.
I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hello, welcome in. My name is Jake, and I'm here to talk to you about duct tape and educational technology and how the two fit together to form a goofy metaphor, but also an EdTech integration mindset that I believe can make the selection of tech tools for your learning environment a little bit less stressful. I'm also here to share with you a really practical interview with digital learning specialist James Varlack, in which we focus on creating engaging instruction. James is a guy that's truly dedicated to the craft of education. I've been seeing it from him on Twitter, from the Twitter chat he hosts with his wife, the other chats he participates in, and his reflections on his learning experiences that he shares there on Twitter as well. And that dedication to the craft rings true in this interview. You hear it in his voice, and you hear it in his words. This dude eats, breathes, and sleeps education. And I'm proud to share his thoughts on engagement with you today. But first, here's a word from today's sponsor. Support for this episode comes from our friends at TextHelp. TextHelp's software tool Equatio is helping to make math and STEM digital, accessible, and more engaging. Simply type, handwrite, or dictate any expression, and Equatio will convert it to accurate digital math, which can be added into a Microsoft Word doc, PDF, or G Suite apps with a click. No coding or tricky and complicated math languages required. Equatio gives students new ways to engage and express math and is a great way for teachers to build assignments, assessments, and provide rich feedback. And because it's web-based, Equatio operates where you do, whether you're teaching in person, remotely, or a combination of the two. Providing students with choice in how they demonstrate math mastery can increase confidence and empowerment. Students become better problem solvers and are more creative and more engaged. Ready to start engaging your students with math in a fully digital way? You can sign up for a free teacher account at text.help/Equatio-FFT. Many of you have reached out in the last few weeks to thank me for sharing the Teachers on Fire Roundtable as a bonus episode here in the Educational Duct Tape feed. Thank you to those of you who did for affirming that. I love to hear from you about what you like, what you don't like, and what you want more of. And I was super psyched not only to get to showcase Tim Cavey's show Teacher on Fire and his weekly YouTube Live roundtable sessions, as well as the other educators who joined me and Tim on that roundtable. And I'm glad to have showcased them here on the show so that you guys could hear it. But so, from the feedback you gave me, it seems to me that one thing that you might enjoy more of is these bonus episodes. So I'm going to share another little bonus next week. So make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss it. I'm really eager to expose you to some of the other awesome EDU podcasts that are out there through these bonus episodes. I hope that you enjoy them. Speaking of things I hope you enjoy, I also hope that you enjoyed the little Q&A segment at the end of the Claudio Zavala Jr. episode. I'm going to make this a regular practice, so start sending in your questions, and I will answer them on the show, sometimes maybe even with the guest, and typically at the end of the show by myself after I have signed off with the guest. So if you've got a question that you'd like me to address on the show, tweet it to me at JakeMillerTech, email it to me, jakemillertech@gmail.com, or submit it to the show's Flipgrid, flipgrid.com/EDU duct tape, or new and improved addition to the show, maybe not improved, just new, submit a voice message on SpeakPipe, which is at speakpipe.com/edu duct tape. Those links, of course, are in the show notes. Anyhow, however you do it, I'll pick 1 or 2 questions to ask at the tail end of each episode. And again, when applicable, I might even ask them to the guests that are on the show. Today, I've got a question from Adrian Hudson about Edulastic, Poll Everywhere, and Mentimeter. So that'll come up after today's chat with James Varlack. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you'll send in your own question. Again, tweet it to me, email it to me, submit it on the show's Flipgrid, or record a SpeakPipe message. Those links, of course, are in the show notes if you need them. Okay, last thing before we get to James is a preview of where I'll be over the next few months. Why do I say last thing? Because I've got a soapbox moment coming up too. Second to last thing before I get to the interview with James is a preview of where I'll be over the next few months. I just say that regularly, and it's not even true. I'm lying to you. It's not the last thing. There's one more thing after it. Anyhow, in a few days from when I release this, I will be doing a Nearpod session for the ECOEA. That's the East Central Ohio Education Association. During February and March, I'm excited to be a part of a really well thought out series of professional developments for the Sylvan Union School District in California. I'm pretty psyched about what they're doing. I'm introducing a set of tools that I think are really good in-person, blended learning with technology, as well as in hybrid learning, as well as in fully remote learning, and then doing some sessions following up on that kind of build off what we talk about in that first session. I'm really excited about the way that they have planned out these sessions. I'm psyched to be part of it. Also, in March, we'll be launching the 9th and final cohort of my virtual course called Best Practices and Tools for Learning in All Settings. I am so psyched about how well received this course has been. I really thought it was a one-off summer PD thing last year in June, but the fact that there have been 8, soon to be 9 cohorts just blows my mind. I've been so proud of the educators that participated in this 12-hour course. You can get details about that 9th and final cohort at jakemiller.net/KSU course 2020. Also in March, I'll be doing 2 sessions in the virtual Spring Q. Super excited to be part of that. I wish I was going to actually be in California for that, not in Ohio. But hey, I'll take virtual Spring Q over no Spring Q at all, that's for sure. In June, I'll be keynoting the summit at Murray State, as well as WitCon and the Panhandle STEM Conference. I am super excited for these. If you have an event coming up, I'd love to be a part of it, whether it's on a stage or on a screen. My favorite thing to do is speak to and work with educators. So if you're planning an event, please head over to jakemiller.net/speaking to get some speaking videos and to send me a message. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. A while back, in an episode with Scott Nunes, I shared a soapbox moment about a Bernard Roth quote. The quote started off with, "In life, typically, the only one keeping a scorecard of your successes and failures is you." And this is something that I've thought about and had to remind myself of consistently, especially in the months since March of 2020. And I've had to remind myself that I'm the only one who is really keeping score of when I include a new soapbox moment and when I don't. I mean, I know it's traditionally been part of every episode that I go off on this soapbox moment and share some wonderful, magnificent quote that comes from somebody else and my often quirky take on it. But really, I'm the only one keeping score of when I do and don't do that. And if that's the case, and if I feel like I don't have time for a new one, which I don't, I'm the only one who can give myself permission to not do it. And that's hard to do. It's hard to be the scorekeeper and the guy whose score is being kept and the guy who gives him permission to not take the shot, right? That's tough. But here I am doing it for myself. So I don't have any more in my soapbox moment for you today, but I do have a reminder. You're the only one keeping a scorecard for yourself. And you're the only one who can give you permission to not do something.
Today's guest.
All right, today's guest is James Varlack. James is a digital learning specialist with McAllen Independent School District in Texas. He has worked in education for 10 years as a middle school math teacher and in campus technology. He and his wife, Dawn, moderate the hashtag RGVEDU chat, and they have 3 lovely children, Jaden, Zara, and Jordan. I think they kind of have 4 children. They have the chat, and then their 3 actual children. You could find James on Twitter at James Varlack. That's James, and then Varlack is Varlack. Or you could reach out to him at the email address that is in the show notes. But not just in the show notes, actually here in the episode with me today is the real James. How's it going, James?
Fantastic, Jake. Glad to be here. I know we've interacted on Twitter several times, but it's officially now a virtual meeting. So glad to meet you.
Yeah, it is official. And not only did we go from being mutual Twitter followers and occasional Twitter chatters on Twitter, and now we're virtual meeters, but now we also discovered that I share a birthday with your youngest child. How crazy is that?
That is crazy. And like we mentioned before, now I will never, ever forget your birthday. So, if I do forget it, always tweet at me and then just remind me.
Next year on my birthday, or in a couple months on my birthday, I'm going to be tweeting to you to tell Jordan happy birthday. Is it Jordan? Jordan's the youngest?
Jordan is the youngest, 10 months
Jordan's
old.
The youngest. I will be messaging you, say, tell Jordan happy birthday. And you will appropriately say back to me, okay, happy birthday, Jake, right?
You may even get a card from me. You never know.
Nice, a card. All the way from Texas. Speaking of Texas, I think Texas, and this is hard for me as an Ohio guy, Texas is clearly leading the running for most educational duct tape guests. I think has to go to Texas. I've had a lot of my own Ohio friends on the show, but Texas is either in first place or a very close runner up. We just had Claudio Zavala on the show recently. We had a couple months ago, Tisha Poncio was on the show, and last year Manny Curiel was on the show, and Craig Clement was on the show. We got a whole bunch of Texas educators. What's in the water down there?
I mean, it's better in Texas. I will say I was imported from Tennessee about 13 years ago. And so I made it to Texas. I've been here ever since. And you know what? Those folks are all great educators. I don't know what's in the water. I think it's just, bigger and better in Texas, I guess.
Bigger and better in Texas. Nice. I like it. And so speaking of Texas educators, both you and your wife are educators. Did I understand that correctly from the bio?
That is correct. Wife is a counselor.
A counselor. Nice. And are you at the same school or same school district or totally different?
This is the first year in the 8 years that we've been together as educators that we are not at the same campus. So now I work in a neighboring district to her. She works in where our address is located. So,
do you feel like you're spreading your wings now? You don't have
she actually gave me the permission to go ahead and step out. Like I had to make sure I had my ducks in a row. I had everything was lined out, budget's been paid, and all that stuff like that. So now she let me go ahead and venture out on my own.
Nice. Then you don't need supervision anymore from the wife. Did you guys meet through the school, or were you together before working there?
We were together before, and then my degree is in accounting. I was an accountant for a litlittle bit, and then I went ahead and did transition into education. And so she was she worked at a college as an admission specialist, and then from there she saw that I had my months off in the summer, and she was like, "I need to do that." So she jumped on over into education as well. She became a science teacher. We started working at the same middle school together.
That's crazy. So my wife and I actually met at the middle school that we worked at. Neither of us work there anymore, but she was a school psychologist, so close, counselor adjacent there. And I was a math teacher at the time, and I've taught science the different years too. So it's kind of interesting, that little parallel there. That's kind of crazy, man. Okay, so now that you guys aren't actually in the same school together, you get your education geekiness on through your Twitter chat, right? So tell us about hashtag RGVEDU chat.
Okay, so the hashtag RGVEDU chat, RGV stands for the Rio Grande Valley. It's an area of Texas that is literally South Texas, right? So it stretches kind of from the Laredo area east all the way to kind of like the Brownsville, Harlingen area. And so great educators, great schools, a lot going on in that area. And so my wife and I had the idea of connecting those educators to each other, right? And then not only connecting them to each other, but other educators around the world. So this is season 3 of the chat. We started 3 years ago. And it's a labor of love, right? If anybody's been on a Twitter chat and getting it ready and getting questions and, getting guests and all those things like that, I'm sure just like a podcast, it is a labor of love. And so we like doing it. We have great interaction with the communities of educators that jump on and, connect. And so that's our goal, is just to, keep everyone connected, help them to kind of, our little model is like chat, grow, impact. So after the chat, hopefully you've grown some, or you can, grow somebody else, teach somebody else, and then hopefully it makes an impact in your classroom or in your educational role.
That's cool. I like that, man. So when you guys do the chat, are you in the same room together, or do you have to go to separate rooms?
Well, I've been doing a lot of the legwork since we've had the baby. So I will say, I'm kind of giving her a break, but we just jumped into kind of like the StreamYard kind of atmosphere. So nice. I think we're going to pursue that a little bit more. So now when we do that, we're in separate rooms for sure.
Nice. Wow, kicking it up a notch, going with the video version too. You guys have the third child, and then you're like, well, we're going to make this even more complex on ourselves.
Hey, just add more fuel to the fire, right?
Right. You guys sound like my kind of people, just continually adding more things, like you said there. Okay. Even though we're kind of giggling and sharing over shared birthdays and things like that, let's play a game. Are you ready for a game, James?
Let's do it.
Nice. Okay, we're going to play a game of 2 truths and 1 lie.
2 truths and 1 lie.
You're going to tell me 3 statements. 1 will be a lie. 2 will be true. I'm going to try to figure out which one's a lie. I will most likely get it wrong, because I almost always do. And then I will get confused about which one really was the lie and get lost. And you'll have to correct me on how to play the game, even though I've now played it for 53 episodes or something like that. But anyhow, go ahead, James. What are your 3 statements?
Okay. Statement number 1. I was able to leave my wedding and start my weekend honeymoon, right? We had a short honeymoon right after our little, the bubble send off, right? So they get the bubbles and they blow the bubbles. Right after that, we were able to leave and start our weekend honeymoon send off. That's statement number 1. Okay. Number 2, as a young kid, I was lost with a group of people on a remote island in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And the last statement, I'm a twin and I have a brother and sister who are also twins.
Huh. Okay, so the last one confuses me. I'm going to come back to that one. So the first one, that just seems like that's got to be a lie. Like, I don't know why you would have thrown that in there unless you're just really good at this game. Like, there had to have been something crazy that happened that kept you from going to the honeymoon right away. So I'm thinking that's a lie, but I want to think about the other ones here. So the Caribbean island. Would you say you were lost on a Caribbean island? Is that what you said?
Yes, we got lost with a group of folks on the remote island in the Caribbean.
That sounds like the best place to get lost, or maybe the worst place to get lost. I'm not sure. It sounds like it was beautiful and maybe slightly terrifying. And then the third one, you are a twin and you have a brother and sister who are also twins?
That is correct.
How? Or is it correct? Right?
Or is it correct? Yeah.
I don't know how that would work. Would that make you guys triplets?
No. So like, I have a twin brother, and then I have a set of siblings that are also twins.
Okay, so there's 4 in total, 2 twins and 2 other twins. Okay, this is like, actually, there was an episode back in the very first season of the show, James, where Sylvia Duckworth was on, and I believe Sylvia is a twin, and Sylvia also has twins herself, her daughters. Or maybe it's not 2 daughters. I can't remember for sure. But she was teaching me about the different types of twins, identical and paternal or whatever. And I had no idea. She had to break it all down for me. And sadly, in my science class, in about a month, I'll be teaching genetics. So
watch out for class. Watch out, class.
I probably better figure this stuff out. I hope my principal is not listening right now. Spoiler alert, he's not. Okay, let me see if I can figure out your lie. I think the first one is the lie. I think the one about the wedding, I don't know why you would have brought that up unless you're just super tricky, unless something crazy happened. Am I right? Was that the lie?
That is the lie. You are correct.
Nice. Yes. Okay, so what was the crazy thing that happened?
Okay, not crazy, but after, we had the dancing, or we didn't actually have a dance. We just ate, and we were doing the greeting, cut the cake and all that. the staff members there that were at the church that we were getting married at, they actually just stepped out like early. So there was this humongous mess. So my wife and I took the last 3 hours and we helped clean up our own.
Oh no. That was like a perfect preview of the married life that was coming up in your future, though, right?
Doing everything together for sure.
Yeah, mostly like cleaning kitchens and cleaning up after people who had fun at something that was supposed to be fun for you.
It was a rite of passage. Yeah, rite of passage.
Rite of passage. Like, you guys are now officially married. We just go ahead and host a Twitter chat now. Okay, so that was a lie. So you really were lost on a remote Caribbean island then?
Yes, 7 years old. My mom and dad are actually from the Virgin Islands, and my dad's island is a small island called Anegada. Great fishing place, right? People go there to deep sea fish and all that. But he hadn't been there in a few years, so we went from my grandfather's house. We went to the beach, right? And it's just there's no like, let's get in a car and go. It's just a big road. You just walk to the beach, right? So we walked to the beach, and it was around dusk, unfortunately. And so it's the flattest place in the entire world. So as soon as the lights go out, you really can't see anything. So we kind of strummed around the beach for about 3 hours. And then we finally found the road that was taking us back. But from there, we still were lost. So we were out there about 6-7 hours at night. There was like a group of 15. All of my family was there. And so, yeah, it was pretty fun. We saw snakes. We got to see bulls. We got to see all the wildlife. It was great and scary at the same time.
Yeah, so a good memory that maybe wasn't so good while it was happening, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. Well put.
And the twins was true as well. You're part of a team of twins, huh?
That's correct. So I have a twin brother named John. We are the youngest in our family. And then I have a brother and sister who actually my brother works in the same district I do. He has a twin sister. So 6 siblings altogether, 2 sets of twins in the family.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. All right, James, we are now going to get into an educational duct tape question. So for the folks out there who might be new listeners, what educational duct tape is my silly metaphor that is actually an ed tech integration mindset, meaning when we choose educational technologies to use in our classroom, we don't think about the educational technology first. We think about what we're trying to do as educators first. And then the educational technology is just a tool, just like duct tape. Like, we don't go about our day thinking, today I'm going to use some duct tape. We think, today I'm going to do whatever's on my to-do list and solve whatever problems I need to solve. And duct tape is well known as a very handy tool that does solve lots of problems. And I think educational technology is similar, but we don't start off our lesson planning by thinking about the technology. We started off thinking about what we're trying to achieve for our learners. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. So the question we're going to talk about today, or the question I have for you, is how can I develop engaging instruction?
Okay, so starting with that premise in mind. Okay, so when I was first became an educator, I made sure that I had the content down, right? So I was got these manuals, I got these books. I also taught middle school math, 6th and 7th grade. Shout out to 7th grade teachers. You can teach 7th grade. You can teach anything in the entire world, right? So I had all my content down. I made sure, every night I was going through the lesson. I had it down. And, I figured, right, as long as I know the content, I can deliver it, right? So that's cool. They're going to sit there and listen, and I'm going to go ahead and just open their brains up, and I'm going to take my knowledge and I'm just going to drop it right on top of them. However, I was definitely missing that engaging piece. And so for me, I had to realize that starting with the learning objectives was the very most important thing, right? So I had to figure out, here's these learning goals, right? And so they're not going to learn this stuff on their own. I'm sure most of them can, and most of them probably could regurgitate it back to me even better. But I need to find a way to connect with these kids, right? So I came in a half semester in February, and a teacher had resigned, and so I was kind of filling the spot. So we had, our state assessment was coming up, and so it was okay, hey, it's just drill and kill time. And so I felt like in that season right there, I kind of could have done a way better job of connecting with the kids so that they felt comfortable, approaching me, discussing things and stuff like that, right? So for me, those learning goals are very important. Now, after that, like my realization, like that was like the realization semester for me. And then from there, over that summer, I was like, okay, now let's focus on engagement, right? Okay. And so my kind of premise is engagement is developed, right? So it means you have a starting place, and then from that starting place, things are grown and nurtured, right? So most of that is centered around communication, right? So I think if nothing else, if teachers are really good communicators, right, they can have engaging spaces, okay? Because I think the pedagogy and those things will actually come like the more that it's practiced as a, right? It's a craft. So teaching is a craft. The more that it's practiced, better that educator will get. So things like being a good communicator are also things that should be practiced, right? So, for me, that's kind of like foundational. So it's got to be developed. No one is going to start at a certain place at the same time and be like great engager here. Someone may be awesome engagement on this end, and they may not be as good as an engager on the other end, right? So.
Yeah. I think that's kind of an important message for people to hear too, is that you can't expect yourself to start off perfect, right? We all have a certain place we start at, and it's different for different people. Nobody starts off at perfect with it all mastered. We need to identify what areas we need to grow in, and then go through the process to do that. And if we expect ourselves to start off as a perfect educator, it's just not realistic. Like myself, right? So I had 12 years in the classroom, and then 5 years as a tech coach. And this year I went back into the classroom, and it has been so far from perfect. And I have been so far from perfect, but I know that I am essentially a first year teacher here because it was a 5-year gap in there of me being full time in the classroom. And you just have to not beat yourself up for that and kind of identify those steps. So I like how you were saying kind of your journey was you started off by knowing your content really well. And so that was something that you did have in your tool belt, but then you had other things that you needed to build and develop that you kind of identified as you went, right?
That's correct. Definitely correct. And I know, people always ask like, hey, if you were a teacher, would you go back to the classroom? Just to speak to your little point, I think it's awesome that you have gone back into the classroom. I think that's like the coolest thing. I think in a heartbeat, if that was a situation for us, we'd also do the same thing. But yes, for sure, I had that content down, and I thought that's how like teaching was supposed to be, right? That's what I thought. I was like, great, I have it. I'm going to deliver it. Kids are going to eat it up, and you know what? I'll just move on to the next day. So, okay. So from there, right, we have to develop and nurture our engagement, grow it. It's a work in progress all the time. So, and I do feel like this, pandemic and this distance learning, a lot of teachers have really had to like buckle down and really improve. And they've done a fantastic job of making engaging spaces for students. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it has some of the same characteristics of what we would do in a normal classroom, pre-March of 2020. But you just have to go about it in a different way. So you think about what were the things that made my lessons and my instruction and my classroom engaging before, and how can I leverage those ideas now in this remote situation?
That's correct. And I think if maybe you were an educator that maybe engagement was not like a high priority, or maybe it was something that you felt like you weren't good at. I think definitely these tools, tech resources, our contacts. Some people may never have used their instructional coaches before at all, and now they're reaching out to those people for sure.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's almost like because in person, if you weren't prioritizing engagement, you could kind of get away with it because you had a captive audience, and I do mean captive, like they were there in your classroom, forced to be in your classroom, and you could see what they were doing, right? But then when you're in a remote learning situation, you're either engaging or they're turning their webcam off and walking away, right?
That is correct. And I think students are definitely drawn to an engaging space, right? So the research and data also shows the more engaging a space is, or a classroom or a virtual meeting, the more likely those learners are going to be to return with, the goal of learning, right? So for sure, engagement is like the life of a classroom now, but is extremely important. So hopefully this situation that we find ourselves in, engagement now is like super high priority up on the list. Yeah.
So what are some ways that you've leveraged technology to do that?
Okay. So when I first started out in the classroom after that first semester, I was kind of like by myself in that collaborative. We had teams, but I was kind of like the only math teacher on in that area, right? So the next year we were put in teams again, and then I had a team teacher. So that was really good for me because we could bounce ideas off each other. One of the things we did very simply to do is we were, had our list and our pedagogy all for us, right? Everything was kind of laid out. And so one of those things was like this problem of the day, right? The very famous problem of the day.
You were a math teacher.
Definitely a math teacher, right? So as soon as came in, greeting became a very important thing, right? So as before, it was just, open the door. Hey, guys, come in, make sure everybody's in, close the door really quickly, get started with class. It was, welcome Sue, welcome Mary, welcome Jose, welcoming everybody into class, right? So that kind of engagement is where it started right there, right? You're kind of like reaching them, especially knowing their name, right? Names are really big things to students. And so that was like a non-tech thing to do, right? Just make sure first couple of days, you just learn their names. That was it. And then from there, that problem of the day, instead of just putting up a piece of paper or, displaying something on the document camera, that was just the problem. We used trending social pop culture to kind of spruce up our problem of the day. So for example, we would take our problem of the days and instead of just putting it up, we would find something like a nice wallpaper. So, Marvel, DC superheroes are all the rage in middle school, right? They love that stuff, right? Yeah. So what we would do is we would find a picture of the Hulk, a picture of Thor. It could be a wallpaper of, One Direction at the time. Kids were going crazy over, right? So I'm dating myself, I'm sure. We would find just a picture and we would put that on that problem of the day, right? Didn't do anything except enhance the background of that slide. But it just seemed like it made it a more apt situation for the students to come in and enjoy working on problem of the day.
Yeah, I agree. It's a small thing, and it's not it's not enough in and of itself, but it's those little pieces that help make the kids feel kind of seen, right? Like my teacher gets me. Like obviously, Mr. Varlack doesn't like One Direction. I'm assuming you weren't a One Direction fan. No offense if you are or were, but I think the kids read that as you trying to connect with them. So it's one of those little pieces that add to that culture you're building in your classroom that can help build engagement, right?
That's correct. And so all we did for those, we would just, find a bunch of wallpapers. We shared a Google Drive folder. And so we would, dump the wallpapers in, use those for problem of the day. And the other thing we did, we made a little Google form and so send it out to the students. And from there, they would tell us something that they really enjoyed, right? If it was music, if it was culture, if it was sports, whatever it was. So we kind of attacked their interest. We made an effort to really attack their interest so that, their voice, their ideas, their likes, their dislikes, those things were a part of our class. And we definitely wanted to know the students on that level.
I like that idea of not just observing what those interests are, like you said, like picking up on the fact that, they like superheroes and, this is the current musical act that they're really into, but actually surveying them about those interests and then using that survey data as ways to connect with the class as a whole. And then maybe even with individuals too, as needed, right?
Yes, for sure. Individuals as needed. And, every now and then somebody would put something like, sir, I don't like anything, and blah, blah, blah. And then that was the time where you could actually have a little deeper conversation and say, hey, okay, you know what? I do think you have something that interests you. Let's find out kind of what it is. And those things. Gaming was, started becoming like gaming's always been big, right? So any, you put up a Mario character on a problem of the day, the kids all know who Mario is, oh, great, So it's one of those things you're just kind of making them feel a part more of the classroom by including their interests.
Yeah. So you were saying you use these interests maybe for and you were saying like a wallpaper. Do you mean like a background of like a Google Slides or something like that? Is that what you meant by that part?
That is correct.
Yeah. And so then did you also put those things into kind of the problem sometimes too? Like if it was like a word problem or story problem, quote unquote, I know those sometimes are not the phrasings we use anymore, but when you made up your problems, did you then put those interests into the problem scenario sometimes?
Yes, we definitely did. And I mean, we would place their names. So a lot of times kids seeing their own names in a problem, so, right. You could say, John or Jose Garcia, he, set the world record in the high jump or whatever. That could be one of your problems, right? And so he may not visualize himself. He's like, sir, I don't run track. I'm sorry about that. But to him, he was like, oh, I need to read the rest of this problem because I'm part of it.
It's about me. I better know.
Better know, right? Yeah. And so if he got it wrong, I'd be like, Jose, what's up? So hopefully they wouldn't get it wrong. But we would put their actual names in the problems, and we would just find a wallpaper, find a problem, find birthdays for them are very important as well. We could we use birthdays a lot for things, and those seem to be very popular, but also very engaging for the kids.
Yeah. Okay, so then what other strategies did you have that were engaging for them?
Okay. So, getting that hook, right? We all talked about the hook. You got to find the hook, right? Whatever the hook means, just kind of reeling them in, I guess. We like to do a lot of reveals. We like to do a lot of challenges, and we like to do a lot of brain teasers. So, we kind of would play off riddles and, puzzles. That was really big. And so, back in the day, right, there was a couple of websites I used. ProdigyGame.com was one, and IcebreakerIdeas.com. You could find a ton of riddles, and I'm talking they could be the simplest riddles that you could find. Right, what's the only word that's spelled wrong in the dictionary? Right, it's wrong. Right, so but putting that out there, you would the engagement, and so we'd make these collaborative activities. You could make it a little. I used to change my seating like constantly in my classroom. And so, starting the year, I'd have them paired up, right? And so that would be one of the things that we'd start out, pair up with your neighbor. If you don't know, turn around to the two neighbors behind you. And then at times we would just like, okay, you can get up, you can ask anybody you want to about this riddle, or you can pick one person in the classroom to be the deliverer of the message, right? We would do a lot of, encoding, right? So we would have a lot of scripted messages. We would take, Google Slides, and you could just put shapes on top of your text, right? And so it hides certain things, and you make little games out of it. So pretty much we're trying to kind of gamify the class, but brain teasers are definitely great tools to use in your classroom.
Nice. That's a nice idea. And I like how these things are, you're kind of something, you're kind of on both sides of sometimes it is academic and sometimes it's not academic. And you're showing that there's, in terms of the students' learning and growth, there's value in both of those things, right? There's value in making the things that are directly related to your curriculum more engaging, but there's also value in doing things that maybe don't directly pertain to the curriculum that are in ways that are engaging, because then you reap the benefits when you're doing the actual academic stuff, right?
That's correct, and I guess that's why the hook name comes from, right? You're kind of reeling them in, getting some interest, but it's like fun, right? To them, it's just straight up fun. And I mean, actually, it's fun for the teachers too, because you can kind of push the envelope as much as you need to. You can put the pressure on. So we would, for sure. Icebreakers, brain teasers. I now like, I kind of coach teachers more. So I'm not as connected to students as I am, but, showing them, Google Arts and Culture, right, has a really cool, puzzle piece now where they take tons of artwork and you can make it into a puzzle. And so just for that, my kids love to do that. I always test everything out on the kids. So Google Arts and Culture has that kind of, take a piece of artwork, splits it up into a puzzle, and you just have to kind of put it back together. And so, tricks the brain into kind of doing work that maybe, I couldn't get them to do right on a math problem. So, definitely those are some cool things.
Yeah. Once again, support for this episode comes from our friends at TextHelp. Create active learners instead of passive learners and foster a deeper understanding of and engagement with math concepts with TextHelp's Equatio, the digital math tool that brings math out of the traditional pen and paper bubble and into the digital world. Built with UDL principles in mind to support a wide range of learning styles, Equatio helps to increase engagement through a personalized learning experience, allowing students to demonstrate math mastery in multiple ways. It's a problem solved on any platform. Equatio works in Microsoft Word, Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Forms, and Drawings. It's also got a super cool collaborative workspace, math space, where you can mix equations, text, and freehand drawings to explore math concepts in different ways. Equatio can turn written math into accessible digital math using the mobile app. It also integrates with popular LMSs like Schoology, Canvas, and D2L Brightspace. Ready to start engaging your students with math in a fully digital way? You can sign up for a free teacher account at text.help/equatio-FFT. Yeah. So far you've talked about how when you were trying to develop this more engaging classroom, you started with kind of the basics of greeting your learners, showing them that you knew their names and greeting them and making them feel at home and connecting with them. And then kind of spicing things up with some pop culture references, kind of making them feel seen and bringing their interest in the classroom, but then also adding in these things that you consider to be hooks, whether they were these reveals or these challenges or these puzzles or riddles or things like that. What other kind of next steps do you go with?
Okay, so learning kind of from the Ditch Summit, which I've been checking out here recently with Matt Miller. I caught Esther Park's video.
She is doing such amazing work. She has become one of my favorite Twitter follows.
Yes, she is for sure like doing outstanding work. And so she kind of laid out some ways engagement kind of happens in her class or interaction happens in her class. And it was student to student, student to teacher, and then student to content. And for me, I would also throw in teacher to teacher, right? Because I directly interact with teachers now. So our job, right, is to kind of help teachers use instructional technology tools in their classroom to better their classroom. And so I would definitely say teacher to teacher on my end. And so kind of going into that a little more, right, where we kind of are looking to create spaces for students now to be engaging, right? So we kind of hit that emotional with the naming part. We've kind of hit the procedural, right? Because once we have that emotion, they're tied in, they're going to want to go ahead and get their stuff ready for class. They're going to be on their best behavior most of the time, right? They're also going to want to show the teacher that the material that the teacher has taught them, they want to be able to learn and perform, right? So that's kind of wrapping that up. So next would be creating some collaborative spaces. And so I know, formative checks and all that is kind of the word of the day. And we do for sure need to definitely, have little quick checks of formative checks. And we can definitely do that by creating collaborative spaces. So for example, Jamboard is all the rage now. Jamboard is a great tool to use to create a nice collaborative space. Even just a simple Google Doc, right? If you take a Google Doc, right, and you just, create a table on a Google Doc, you don't know how powerful that could definitely be. Creating and using a graphic organizer, right, on a Google slide, right? Just creating a space where a student can do something. And like for me, I know I was definitely we were training in the summer. I was showing teachers all about drag and drop activities because like those are the best things to do. And so those are spaces where you can create activities, you can add your pedagogy, your content, and students can interact with the tech, but also they have a space where they can share, right? So you can have one shared Google slide where everybody jumps on and does something. They add a text, a picture, an image. You can have the Jamboard do the same thing. Everybody gets their nice little sticky note, post it with their name, and you start with a juicy question. Miller's all about his juicy questions. So you can start with a juicy question. You can make it content related, right? And so from there, those frames, you can split the kids up. They can have individual frames. You can be all in one frame. Spaces like Padlet is a great tool. And now all of these kind of like whiteboard collaborative spaces are coming out. Whiteboard.chat, Whiteboard.fi. Teams has a great whiteboard feature and things like that. So all of these spaces can be used for collaboration. So all you're doing is taking your content and you're kind of finding, okay, so where can I have the kids kind of get together and maybe learn from each other in this space? And then you're finding tools like we just mentioned to kind of create that.
Yeah. I like how, you listed a bunch of different tools for collaborative spaces in there, and, somebody listening shouldn't run out and try to start using all of them. They should use, and it was something we revisit regularly on the show, whichever one meets their needs and they feel comfortable with, right? It could just be Jamboard. It could just be Google Docs. It could just be Google Slides. It could just be Padlet. And I love that you mentioned Whiteboard.chat. And I always wonder, is it Whiteboard Whiteboard.fi or Whiteboard.fi. What am I supposed to say there?
I think it's .fi.
We'll have a survey. We'll see what everybody says, and then the whiteboard and Teams. Yeah, but if you're mindful about what you're trying to achieve, you could potentially use any of those, right?
That's correct. So those tools could be very specific to the need that is being addressed for your need to have a collaborative space. So definitely. Cannot reiterate, when you have a tool that you like and you enjoy and has meaning in your classroom, right? That means the students are able to learn from it. They're able to kind of navigate it in a way, after they're taught and they can kind of play around. They're able to navigate in an easier, simple way, practical way. You need to become a master of that tool, right? So become a master, right? David Carradine. And that show back where he was the kind of the loner who was walking around, but the master says, now you can leave after he performs that little task or whatever. Right. Time for you to leave. So it's only time for you to leave that tool once you've mastered it. So David Carradine reference, people are going to be like, who's David Carradine? Like, what is going on? Like, how old is this dude or whatever? So
what is that show? I know what you're talking about. I gotta Google it now.
I believe it was Kung Fu. I believe it was
Kung Fu. I feel like it is Kung Fu.
Kung Fu.
David Carradine, American actor. There he is. Yep. Television series Kung Fu. Yeah.
Kung Fu. Right. And so every completely aggressive. But yeah, for sure, become a master of that tool. I kind of refer to the summer and this first digital learning wave was the digital gorge, right? All these tech companies were doing fantastic work and being very open and saying, hey, take our tools, use them for right now, use them as best you can. And so that digital gorge, teachers were just like eating that up. Students were eating it up. But it may not have been an excellence. It may have just been just right to fill the need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a digital gorge. I like that. And I like that reference too to the Kung Fu reference. I didn't see the Kung Fu part coming there. But become the master of the tool. It's only time to move on to a new one once you've mastered it. And I think that's an important message to hear, that it's okay to say, you know what? I'm still trying to learn how to use Jamboard right now and get really good at it. I'm not going to try out Whiteboard.chat yet. I'm not there yet. I'm trying to master this other one first. Don't you think?
I think so, definitely. And I think popularity always kind of leads to, how do you say it? You're not like trying to be excellent. You're just kind of being average, I guess, maybe. So you may use it in an average way when maybe a little more thought processing, a little more ingenuity, right? You would find a way to kind of really touch the heart of the kids or touch their space or whatever. And so you then end up using it for that need, and you like, okay, now I need to kind of figure out the best of it. So then you become a master of it. Once you figure out the best of it and how it fits in your classroom, you become a master.
Yeah, I like that. And I often reference the difference between aiming for being effective and aiming for being impressive, right? Which is it that we want to do in our classroom, right? We feel like what we should be doing is the impressive thing, when in reality, that's not our goal in the classroom. Our goal is to be effective, right? We need our students to learn and feel confident in their learning. We have these certain set of goals that we're trying to be effective about. So just because the tool is a trendy tool doesn't mean you have to go switch to it to be impressive. Just stick with learning that one tool and becoming effective at it.
That is absolutely facts right there. That my man is Jake is spitting out facts. So yes, could not have said it better myself. Trending is great. Trending is great. Like, we don't want to knock trends or whatever. They're great. But they do lend themselves to, just using it for a time and then leaving it behind. So, for sure, become a master of that tool that you definitely want to check out.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned Esther Park in there, and she is, by the way, at Mrs. Park Shine on Twitter. A great follow, lots of great information. I'll try to link in. I don't know if it might be, by the time this airs, might be too late to see her Ditch Summit video, but I'll at least link in her her Twitter handle and everything like that, so everybody can track her down. But she is great for Jamboard resources, especially. Shares a lot of really great templates that she uses to engage her kids, and they look amazing. And that's one piece of something being engaging is they're hip, they're cool. They have her face on them often to show that connection with the students, and they look nice. I recently watched a video on that Whiteboard.chat. I haven't tried it out yet with students, but I watched a video from my friend Sethi de Klerk, whose YouTube channel is what is it called? I don't know. I will link in the link to that video. But I was pretty impressed with Whiteboard.chat. It's made by a group of educators. You go in, the teacher goes in. You don't have to have an account. You want an account if you want to be able to go back to your whiteboards. But without an account, you can make individual or group boards for your students to go on to. You send your kids a link. They don't have to have an account. They hop right in. The boards can be blank or they can have content in them. And then the kids can add in drawings or text or links or YouTube videos or images or math typing, or there's other things. I can't remember what all there are. But kind of the important parts about that is, number one, that board could be one board per student or one board per group, or one board for the whole class. And then also the teacher can then jump into each individual board and collaborate in almost like their breakout rooms in a class or something like that. So that's a really good tool, really, really good tool. Good one to bring up there for engaging, for sure.
Yes, for sure. That's what I like. The teacher can kind of jump in. And I believe it's Flipped Classroom Tutorials is Sethi.
Yes.
I checked him out many times.
Yeah, he makes great stuff. Now, have you used Whiteboard.fi, and do you know how it compares?
Okay, I've used Whiteboard.fi, a little simpler, same thing, right? But I think only in that sense, you're just creating that space and they're all kind of getting on and doing something. So I used it in a collaborative as an entire group thing. So I wanted to show some educators like, hey, you can have a space that maybe is not something that like it's really free, right? So and then you can have all the kids jump on, other than a Google Doc, right? So we have, Google Docs and they can collaborate that way for sure. But we were kind of reaching out for tools that, and also teachers need to like whiteboards, right? They were, document cameras are great and all that, but they were looking for kind of digital answers for those things. And so we kind of shared those things with them for sure.
Yeah. And I think a couple of the big differences between the two of them, Whiteboard.chat, I think, is completely free. Whiteboard.fi, I think, has pricing. I know for sure it has pricing. I think it's got ads in the free version, and it's kind of a freemium model where you upgrade what you have access to as you go up through them. So I think I would lean towards Whiteboard.chat being the better of the two of them, but I'm going to, I think Sethi actually did a video on Whiteboard.fi as well. So I think I'll probably end up linking both of those into the show notes for people to check them out and compare them. What kinds of things, when you've used them, what kinds of things have you done, especially ones that are, kind of exemplary in your mind in terms of being engaging?
Well, I definitely think, so our district, thankfully and graciously has purchased a couple of tools that, I feel like are really great engaging space tools. So number one of them is Pear Deck, right? So we have the great tool Pear Deck. And so, yesterday I was doing a couple of days ago, I was doing a training for teachers, that had not really used Pear Deck. And so we kind of did the finish the doodle activity, right? So we just put a little line on the side, and I mean, they went to town. And I'm like, guys, like if you are seeing and feeling the way that you're feeling about this little activity, just think about how much your students kind of would enjoy doing something like this, right?
Oh, my 8th graders flip for it, and they beg me, like on a day when we don't do it, they're like, can we complete the squiggle or complete the drawing? And I'm like, no, not today, maybe tomorrow. And they're like, oh, come on. And early in the school year, we were doing them, and they of course thought that we'd be going back to fully in person, all in model any day now. We have yet to at this point. And they're like, we're all back in school. Could we still do the complete the drawing slides? And these are 8th graders. 8th graders don't get excited about anything in school. So yes, I second that. And I think what's nice about it too is, and I know you're going to get into more of the wonders of Pear Deck and some other tools too, but I was reading this article on Classcraft that's written by Jenny Fulton, and she talks about, I'll link into the slides or into the show notes. She talks about the 3 different types of student engagement. One is emotional. That's the student feeling valued, feeling cared for, feeling like they're a part of it, feeling their voice is heard. And you've talked about a lot of different things in there, with your pop culture references. You're greeting the students at the door, the collaborative spaces, and being able to hear their voice in there, that are that emotional piece. But also, if you're doing these things in Pear Deck, right, the first thing that happens when they log in, right, is it asks them, how are you feeling today? Right. And then if your second thing is that complete the drawing, they're feeling like their class is kind of made for them. Like it doesn't check off a box for the teacher to have the kids complete those drawings. It literally is just for fun. So that's that emotional piece there, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and then the second piece that Jenny talks about in that blog post is behavioral, right? So this is what we normally see as engaged. Like you look at a classroom and everybody's looking towards the front and they have their materials out, and you're like, oh, they're engaged. That's the behavioral engagement piece. And a tool like Pear Deck, because it puts everything right into the tool, right? Therefore, it almost forces that behavioral engagement and lets the teacher then see what the kids are doing too. Let them see them respond on the slides. So we know they're behaviorally engaged, or at least we're setting them up to be. And then the third part is the cognitive engagement, where they're actually engaged in the learning experience and thinking and challenged by what they're reading about or learning about, right? And that's that cognitive piece of engagement. So sorry, I got excited about Pear Deck and engagement. I stole your thunder there for a second, James, but I'll give it back to you. Go ahead.
And speaking to that behavioral engagement piece, so I think what Jake is really saying is, so if I'm in a classroom, even if I'm in a virtual space and I'm on a Pear Deck and the teacher is displaying student work, if I haven't been doing that and I see, 20 responses and I'm kid number 21 out of 21, well, I'm probably better get with it, right? So I'm probably going to be more apt to be encouraged that way, instead of the teacher having a mic off and say, hey, let's go in the breakout room. I need to talk to you real quick. And, that's going to be great, right? In the end, those one-on-one conversations are what we definitely need to have. But let the work of the tool kind of encourage the kid to want, or to, more out of need, right? It needs to finish this, right? Because it's for a grade, or it could be for a form of assessment to kind of be encouraged to kind of jump on and get connected.
Right. Yeah. And in classrooms of old, it was like the behavioral engagement came from, or at least part of it came from being afraid that your teacher was going to walk around the room and seeing that you weren't writing your notes or whatever. Right. And so it created this kind of situation between the student and the teacher, where the teacher was the warden or something, like they were the person we fear. Like, I hope they don't catch me not paying attention. Right. And so by what you're saying with Pear Deck, it kind of takes the teacher out of that bad guy role, right? Even though the teacher can see if the kid is engaging with the content of Pear Deck, it's not directly the teacher that is making them react and do that.
That's correct. It's the pressure. Well, you hate to say pressure, but it's the heightened anxiety, maybe. Pressure, maybe a better word, to be involved, because everyone else seems to be engaged doing this. So I need to jump on board.
Yeah, you could tell we're both middle school teachers here, because we're being real about this, right? We're admitting that there are times when you need to have things in place to make sure your students are actually engaging and participating. It's not just an educational utopia at all times, right? We got to be real about it as middle school educators.
I'm telling you, like I said before, if you can teach seventh, I even noticed this. I noticed it when I went from 6th grade to 7th grade. So if you can teach 7th grade, like presidency, go ahead and sign up, because you can definitely for sure do that for sure.
Yep. Okay, so more Pear Deck. What are some other favorite features that you like in Pear Deck in there?
Okay, definitely Pear Deck. So the new kind of features rolling out, the shared teacher classroom part of it, shared teacher dashboard, excuse me. That I think is going to be like a really game changer, right? So that's what we've kind of been training on lately here in our district. And a quick shout out to my digital learning team, right? Digital learning, right? We had to change the name because technology and education, when they see it, it's like fix my computer. So I love the name change, but my director, Ann, is on top, and she's really progressive. And, she's like, hey, we need to find things that are going to work for our team. And so our team of Rosie and Gonzalo, we've been really taking Pear Deck and pushing it. So that shared teacher dashboard now So if you don't know, right, you just send, once you get on the teacher dashboard on Pear Deck, you take that, you can go to the three dots, you click the link, or it says, do you want to invite a co-teacher? And so you send that link to your teachers, and then you can have as many teachers as you want on a Pear Deck. And then now with that little feedback piece that is now built into Pear Deck, you can have multiple teachers giving multiple feedback opportunities to students. So whatever I may not see, my co-teacher may see, another teacher may see. And so we can all kind of like really build up this student with that feedback piece.
Yeah, I've at times, you give kids that like 3-minute timer in there, and while they're going, I'm like, I'm going to give feedback to as many kids as I can, right? And I'd get feedback to like 4 kids out of my class or something like that. And I'm like, I wish there were 3 of me in the class right now. So if you've got a co-teacher, let them into Pear Deck too, and they could be giving feedback to other kids while you are. That's a really great point. And that feedback, guess what that builds? That builds engagement, right? Because it has both that emotional piece in there where it's the teacher talking to the student. It has that behavioral piece in there where it's making sure the student's on task and focused. And it has that cognitive piece in there where if you're talking about the learning, you're keeping the kid cognitively engaged with the task. And also going back to what you shared from Esther, talking about interaction, it's that student to teacher interaction right there that also is hopefully supporting student to content interaction.
That's correct. And then all those things you just mentioned, what they do is they make that student believe that the next time there's a Pear Deck, I'm going to receive some type of great feedback as well. So I'm going to want to jump on this Pear Deck again to kind of get the same experience. Yeah.
Well, it tells them the teacher really is looking. It tells them, and then if the feedback experience is a good one, then it's something that they want to experience again.
Definitely, for sure. And now, like the audio piece now in Pear Deck is a really cool tool. I don't think we really use media enough. Now teachers are like, media's going crazy now, but using media, so that kind of adding that audio piece right now, embedding websites, embedding different tools inside Pear Deck. So Pear Deck is well-rounded to create a totally engaging space. It hits all 3 of those: emotional, behavioral, and definitely cognitive.
Yeah, I agree. And you talk about some of those collaborative spaces too earlier. And that's the one thing that Pear Deck's kind of lacking is a built-in collaborative space. Like, so students can all answer and then I could show their answers up on the screen for everybody to see. But that's not actually collaborative, right? And so what you could do to make it collaborative is take some of those tools you talked about earlier, like Jamboard or Padlet or Google Slides, and embed them into your Pear Deck on a website slide and build that engagement right inside of there, right?
That's correct. Our district is 1-to-1. We have iPads at the elementary level. And so I was able to help teachers send a direct link for Google Arts and Culture activity, which is the Vincent van Gogh kind of. So Vincent van Gogh, you can like turn your camera on and become Vincent van Gogh, and you can record yourself and all that. So sharing with these art teachers how they were able to do that. Was able to embed and send them that direct link. So, Google Arts and Culture, right? It's art and stuff. So you have to kind of just be careful about the content. But I sent it as a direct link, the kids were able to do that. And then after the Pear Deck was closed, right, we're safe and sound. So that was a pretty cool way to app smash right there.
I got to agree with you on the Google Arts and Culture and the potential making sure it's appropriate for kids. Because I was in there trying out one of their new. It wasn't the puzzle game, but it was one of the other like little experiences where you're trying to match different paintings, put them in chronological order or something. I don't remember what I was doing. And there was this one painting that I feel like I had nightmares about for days. It was a painting of a mother pig with the baby pigs all over her. And it was, I'm not going to sleep tonight, James, because now you made me think about it. It was one of those things where when I saw it, I had to show it to my wife because I was like, somebody else has to share in this pain with me. Oh, sorry to go off task there. I've lost myself. You thought it's a late evening recording for us here.
I'll be sure not to get on Google Arts and Culture tonight.
I'm sending you the link. I'm going to punish you with it.
Happy birthday.
Right. Happy birthday. Exactly. And we all, and you'll know when. So now that you've got me worried about this pig painting again, oh gosh, James, I can't believe you put that back in my mind by bringing up Google Arts and Culture. And you've got me engaged in this concern about this pig painting. We have seriously hit on a lot of different ways to help our students be engaged in the learning environment. And I like that I think when I started off as an educator 19 years ago or whenever it was, 20 years ago when I started my program, maybe, I thought that being engaging meant being entertaining, right? And that certainly is part of it. Like an entertaining teacher is often an engaging teacher, but just because you're the one that can tell jokes and is comfortable up in front of the kids and, can control an audience, that doesn't necessarily make it, the question wasn't, how do I be an engaging presenter or an engaging teacher? It was, how do I create engaging instruction? Right. And so you hit on a variety of different tools that make the learning experience engaging for your kids. And it shows that there's a lot of different facets to it, right?
That's right. And like you said, being an entertainer, that is great, right? That definitely will keep your kids, their eyes on you. Mm-hmm. But in the end, like you said, it may not, transform itself into learning for them. So the great thing is, if you can do your best to kind of master your content, then when you do have a learning goal that you need to support with technology or, some type of tech tool, you will be versed well enough in the content that now you're just kind of learning kind of the tool. So it won't be like learning both at the same time. So then you'll be able to kind of like address the needs of your kids whenever they have an issue or something like that. So yeah, for sure. Yeah,
there's a lot of different pieces to it, right?
Yes, definitely a lot of different pieces to creating an engaging space. Number one, you have to include all your content. You have to include the voice from the students, right? So, hey, ask them, hey, was that a good lesson or not? Which a lot of times we don't do that self-reflection, but it should be kind of like a foundational piece of our teaching. But, hey, just asking the kids, reflecting on if it was good or not. Because, I always ask my spouse because she's going to be real all the time. And she was like, that was not good. I would not do that in my classroom. And so for me, that was kind of a good check for me. That's huge. Yeah, a good check for me.
So that reflection is an important piece there too, and then getting that feedback. That's a nice point to bring up too. There, man, you've brought a lot of stuff to the table tonight, James. And the people, it's weird to say tonight because some of the people are like, it's 6 a.m. I'm driving to work. It's not 6 a.m. But a lot of really great ideas. I so appreciate you being on the show tonight. I'm saying tonight again. I so appreciate you being on the show and sharing all this stuff. I think we're going to wrap up so you can go watch another episode of Kung Fu. But I really, really appreciate you being on the show, man. Thank you so much.
It was great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jake.
It was so great talking to James. As I mentioned earlier, you can hear his passion for education in his voice and in his words. I'm glad that you were here to hear it. I hope that you'll follow him so that you can keep learning from him. To tie a bow on our conversation, so to speak, here are some of the things that James and I discussed. First, James shared a few steps to building engaging instruction. Know your content, know your learning goals, connect with your learners. He also reminded us that engagement is developed and engagement is a work in progress. So we don't all have it right away. And it's something that we work on throughout our years in education and never quite perfect, right? We keep approaching perfect levels of engagement. We keep finding new ways to engage with our kids. Some of his tech-related tips were related to, using pop culture references as backgrounds in Google Slides, certainly using those pop culture references wherever you can, but he talked about using them as backgrounds in Google Slides. Next up, using Google Forms or whatever kind of survey tool you use to learn students' interests to then use maybe in those backgrounds or within problems or within discussions or games. Using Google Slides to create reveal activities to add some excitement to what you do in class. Using Google Arts and Culture to add hooks and things like that to your lessons. Using collaborative spaces. We talked about Jamboard and Google Docs and Google Slides and Padlet and Whiteboard.chat and Whiteboard.fi and the Teams Whiteboard, all as good places for collaboration. He talked about leveraging tools like Pear Deck or Nearpod in lessons, and specifically he talked in Pear Deck about the new edition of the shared teacher dashboard, so that you can both two different teachers giving feedback and kind of manning the lesson in there. And one last thing from the talk with James that I really liked was his Kung Fu quote that he shared, become the master of your tool. It's only time to move on when you've mastered it. And that actually came up in within the chat during my live keynote at a conference this past weekend, the Fort Worth Technology Conference, I was looking back at the comments, and somebody said, as I was talking about tech tools, they said something to the effect of, doesn't it make sense to just learn one tool and get really good at it and get really good at all the ways of using it? And I do agree with that. And I think that resonates to James's quote there. Sometimes taking one tool and getting really good at it before moving on to the other one is a great practice. I often believe in maybe getting really good at using one formative assessment tool and one lesson delivery tool and one video tool or whatever the tools are, right? But getting good at a certain small subset of tools before moving on to others. And that subset might be one, might be two, might be three, but I really like the use of that Kung Fu quote to showcase that. Last but certainly not least, it is time for my favorite part of the show, which is the celebration of the adjacent possible. Adjacent possible is the idea that whatever you do, whatever you try, whoever you talk to, whoever you listen to, wherever you go, opens you up to new adjacent possibilities. And the connections and discussions between me and you, and me and James, and you and James, and you and each other, between duct tapers, between educators, those open up our adjacent possibilities. So this is the part of the show where we hear connections with the duct tapers. And today, we're going to expand our adjacent possible with a question from a listener. So Siri struggled last time, but we're going to give her another chance, and Siri is going to help me out with a tweet that came to me from Adrian Hudson. Take it away, Adrian and Siri.
I'm a little behind on my episodes, but I truly enjoyed you and Nicole and all the helpful hints. Have you all compared Poll Everywhere and Edulastic to the similar tools you discussed?
And then Adrian continued with Siri's help, of course.
I've used both Edulastic and Poll Everywhere, but this was my first time checking out Mentimeter after the episode. Edulastic has lots of ways to create assessments from scratch or nationally released items. I like that you can upload PDFs and make digital assessments.
Okay, so thank you, Adrian and Siri, for that question. So the reason that Adrian was asking this question was because in that episode with the interview between me and Nicole Taylor, we were talking about a collection of different formative assessment tools, and one tool that we mentioned was Mentimeter. And I think Nicole recommended it, and I do like Menti. I think their free version is kind of limiting, but I like it. And so Adrian was wondering how it compared to the two tools that she uses, which are Edulastic and Poll Everywhere. Well, the simple answer here, Adrian, is it compares really well to one of them and really poorly to the other one. So it's really going to depend on what you're trying to do here. So let me break it down. And by the way, I do some research for this question, which is good. That feels good to do that research. And now I know these answers and I've written this down, so now I won't forget them. Of course, they will probably change in August when the tools update some of their features or something like that, but you never know. So first up, let's talk about the tool that Mentimeter does not compete with, and that is Edulastic. So Edulastic, as Adrian alluded to in her answer there, is a fantastic assessment tool. Like if you want a digital summative assessment tool that doesn't necessarily mirror what you might have done in a paper assessment, but kind of comes close to it, like at least in style, it's kind of similar to it. And I say that in neither a bad way nor a good way. I know everybody's classrooms and everybody's school expectations are different, and you might be in a situation in your school where you're expected to give a somewhat standard formatted summative assessment, and that's out of your control. If you're in that kind of situation and you need to do it digitally, Edulastic is a fantastic tool for it. The other thing Edulastic is really great for is mimicking a standardized test. Now, that might not be a lofty goal because I'm like, I hate standardized tests in the first place. Why would I want a tool that then mimicked it? But if you're trying to prepare your students for it, then I guess I could see the merit in wanting a tool that does so. And I know some of you are turning your nose up at that right away. And I understand that feeling too. But here are some of the pros of Edulastic. So Edulastic, really good data on your students' performance. The questions are standards aligned. So that means you're going to get data that is based on standards. So you could use it for like mastery-based grading and things like that. So it's really good for item analysis. As I said, it's good for mastery-based grading or standards-based grading. It'll really help you identify students who need support. It'll help you maybe create student mastery profiles about your students that you could talk about with parents during parent-teacher conferences. It'll help you break down assessment data based on a variety of factors or subgroups. So you can put student data in there and really break it down. I think it's kind of unlikely that like one teacher in a school is going to start using Edulastic. I really see it as a tool that's going to be used on a bigger scale throughout a school. I don't think that's necessarily the only way it's going to be used, but I think that's probably a more typical situation. But it does bring in really good data. Now, what my friend Holly Clark would say, if you remember Holly's episode before, is she wants assessment that is a press record assessment. She wants to hear the student's voice. She wants to hear the student express themselves. She wants to really tap inside of the student's brain. And I don't know if you're going to get that with Edulastic, but if you're looking for a standardized test formatted kind of assessment tool with a lot of different features, Edulastic is probably it. So here's some of the stuff Edulastic has in it. First of all, it has a scratch pad so kids can show their work and things like that, or, like type out answers and make diagrams and prepare answers and things like that. Question types, there are drag and drop questions, there's diagram labeling, there's multiple choice, there's multiple select, you can select more than one. You can do your multiple choice questions in a table, so if they have some kind of theme that connects them all. Your questions could have images, your questions can have video, your questions can have audio. It's really good for math because there are coordinate plane questions where you graph on a coordinate plane. There are line plot questions where you plot on a line. There are fraction diagrams where you like shade in parts of a fraction in a diagram, I should say. Really good with math formatting, like typing in equations, typing in fractions, things like that. And most of that is in the free plan. What the paid plan gives you is the ability to use rubrics, the built-in read aloud feature. It's not in the free version. It puts in the Desmos calculator, which I think is probably their way to really, shape their tool for people who are trying to prepare for standardized test prep. Like they withhold the Desmos calculator, except for the paid version. A little bit sneaky on their part there. It also adds in better data, more rich data in the paid version, the ability to collaborate with other teachers on your assessments. And I think it has the ability in the paid version to score paper assessments. So if you have bubble sheets, which please, I really hope you're not using bubble sheets, but I don't know. Different people's situation is different. So the other tool that Adrienne said she uses is Poll Everywhere, and that's the tool that really does compare to Mentimeter. So they're very similar tools, and I think on the face, if I'm trying to use one for free, I think Poll Everywhere is probably the one I'm going to use. So Poll Everywhere, you might remember, was really kind of the first formative assessment tool out there because it worked with flip phones. So I used it in my class probably in like 2009 or so, because my kids could use their own flip phones with it and respond via text message, which was really cool. I had to tell the kids, like, text messaging rates might apply, but otherwise they could respond to questions with text, and that was neat. But now it's improved past there. You could ask multiple choice questions, a word cloud question. You could do Q&A in there, like during a presentation, and the kids or the audience could upvote and downvote questions to prioritize which questions you respond to. There's a clickable images option in Poll Everywhere where you could put in a picture with maybe 4 quadrants, and the kids could click a section of the image to indicate their answer. Or maybe put multiple pictures and they click on the part of the picture that's theirs. Put an open-ended questions or surveys, short answers, a select on a map question where you select a certain location on a map. And so Poll Everywhere used to be kind of plain, back in like 2009 or whenever it was that I was using it. But now, you can launch it from PowerPoint, you can launch it from Google Slides, from Keynote, or just on their website. Students can still respond actually with text messaging, but they can also respond on any mobile device or any web browser or on a mobile app. They now have an asynchronous option, so you can send kids a link to do it or even embed it on a website. They added in competitions that are kind of like Kahoot or quizzes kind of games. There is a paid plan, but really with a paid plan, it just gives you a couple features like better reporting and the ability to show live results to participants. So you really could get away with the free plan from Poll Everywhere. Mentimeter, on the other hand, which is the tool that Nicole and I talked about, is a little bit slicker and a little bit better looking, I think, and has a couple really nice features, but its free plan, I believe, is more limited. And here's the main limitation of its free plan. So on Mentimeter, you can have an unlimited audience size. You can have unlimited number of presentations, and they can have an unlimited number of content slides. Okay, so like presentations like a PowerPoint or a Google Slides. And that all sounds wonderful. The problem with the free plan is each of those presentations can only have 2 question slides in it. So imagine if you were making a Pear Deck or something and it only had 2 questions. That's pretty limiting. They also have something called quizzes in Mentimeter, and you could have 5 of those in each Mentimeter presentation. So that's a little bit better, but still that's pretty limiting. And that's in the free version. So that's one reason to step up to the paid version at Mentimeter. Now, the paid version is fairly priced, so I'm not saying it's a horrible thing, but Poll Everywhere is a little bit better on that. Also, another thing about the paid plan and Mentimeter, on the free plan, your presentations are public by default, or only public is the only option for free plans. So that might be a deal breaker in some schools too. But some of the pros of Mentimeter is some of the things they do in there. So you could build in really slick interactive presentations. They could have videos in them. They could have images in them. They could have polls in them. And they're great for collecting data and opinions, work really well with smartphones. I use a Mentimeter in one of my presentations for generating a word cloud. But now I kind of wonder, maybe I should use Poll Everywhere for that and try that out sometimes too, because you can do a word cloud in there. But Mentimeter also has multiple choice questions, Q&A as well, just like Poll Everywhere did, ranking questions where you put things in a certain ranked order. Let's see, open-ended questions, scales questions, rating this on a scale of whatever to whatever, 2x2 grids, which is like prioritizing two different things about it. So like if you were thinking about maybe restaurants on a scale of price and quality of food, right? What quadrant would you put it in? High price, high quality food, low price, low quality food, where would you put it? That's a 2x2 grid. There's 100-point questions, which are kind of neat, where you take 4 options and weight them based on how important the 4 options are, or something like that. Like this one gets 50, this one gets 30, this one gets 20, and that one gets 10. I don't know. And one thing that I think is really cool on Mentimeter is the Mentimote option, which is like you use your phone as a remote for a Mentimote or a Mentimeter presentation. And then they have fun quiz competitions in Mentimeter too. But the important thing to remember is all of those question types I talked about, you can only have 2 of them in each of your presentations. Have as many presentations as you want, but only 2 questions in each. And last, you could do 5 quiz slides. So the ones I talked about, the fun quizzes, you could actually have 5 of those questions in the Mentimeter. So a little bit better, but still you get a little more for free in Poll Everywhere. So Adrian, I hope that helps. I will actually stick some of this in the show notes for Adrian and anybody else who's curious about it. I will also link to Adrian's tweet in the show notes if anybody else wants to reflect on what I shared there, or Adrian's question, or bring in any additional information for Adrian or for me or for the rest of us or for the greater good. You could just click on her tweet and then respond right there. And then who knows, I might even share your additional information in a future episode. Okay, if you've got a question like Adrian's, you could tweet it to me at Jake Miller Tech, email it to me at jakemillertech@gmail.com, submit it on the show's Flipgrid at flipgrid.com/eduducttape, or record a message on my SpeakPipe page, which is a new addition to the podcast, at speakpipe.com/eduducttape. All right, and our second and final piece of today's celebration of the adjacent possible is an Apple Podcasts review from Guise, Guisee, who I have a hunch might be Eric Guise from the awesome podcast We Got Teched, which is Tech Ed. We Got Teched. Anyhow, Guise titled their review, Great Content Every Time, and expanded on that with Jake provides listeners with great guests, theory and practice, ed tech tools, and humor. He connects everything together through a centralized theme, which is a metaphor called educational duct tape. Thanks for that, Guise. And just in case that was Eric Guise, take a digital walk over to the We Got Teched podcast and subscribe to that one too, as a way to thank them. And if that wasn't him, oh well, because it's a good show anyhow, and I'll be glad to have you subscribe to another good show. All right, and finally, as every good learning experience ends with, I've got to end with a homework assignment for you. So your homework for this week, I'd like you to find a colleague. Do you guys have your planners out to write this down in? Get your planners out, or get your to-do list out. You're not just going to remember this. Look, if you want to get your homework done and bring your grades up, you're going to have to write down the assignment, you guys. Your homework for this week, I'd like you to find a colleague who is a fan of Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. It's really hard for me to say Reese's. I want to say Reese's, but I know in the commercials they say Reese's, so I'm trying to reform myself. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and tell them about this show. Not because I'm going to give them Reese's or because Reese's is sponsoring the show, but because that person must be awesome and I want them as a listener. So go find a good friend or colleague of yours who likes Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. I'm just calling it Reese's, you guys. Find a friend that likes Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and tell them about educational duct tape. Okay, that does it for today's episode. Check the show notes for details about signing up for my newsletter, joining the Duct Tapers Facebook group, inquiring about having me speak at an upcoming event, getting some podcast stickers, and more. As always, as a parent, I'm grateful for the work you do, and as an educator, I'm proud of your dedication to lifelong learning. I'll see you guys in a fortnight.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please consider rating and reviewing the show on your favorite podcast app. #EduDuctTape.